You're listening to the Perth Property Show, Australia's only weekly property podcast by West Australian experts for West Australian listeners. Catch your latest episode every Monday at 7 a.m.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Perth Property Show. My name is Trent, Fleskens, your host. As always, this week we're continuing the conversation around new solutions for the supply of housing in Western Australia, especially in the residential market where we need it most, where we're feeling the pinch both at the cash register, but also in just how long it takes to get a house out of the ground these days and move on to the next chapter. I'm building my own family home right now, and I wish I could have moved in the day that I signed on with the first trade. But obviously, the time takes what it takes in Western Australia right now, and unfortunately, it's a lot longer than we're used to, and a lot more expensive. So this podcast obviously is built to try and find solutions, whether it's in planning, or it's in culture, or it's in innovation and technology, and which is why we're having a conversation today with Mark D'Alessandro, Managing Director from Contec Australia, about a topic we've never spoken about before. It is essentially robotic construction with concrete. I'm not saying it as well as it probably can be, or explaining it as well as it can be, but I'll let Mark do that. Mark, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Trent.
For the very lay person who hasn't turned on Channel 7 or Channel 9 and looked at one of the pieces that you guys have been featured on, what exactly is this technology? And how could you explain it in contrast to how we normally build a home in WA?
So the technology itself is very new, but it's delivering a product which has been around for hundreds of years.
Thousands of years.
Thousands of years even. Traditional concrete, it's just now delivered by a robot in a very simple way of explaining it. However, the concrete itself is piped through our machine and extruded into printable layers, one layer upon another, and until you get a completed wall in any shape you want.
So when I think about this stuff, robot construction, I mentioned the word printing, I suddenly think about 3D printing. I think about plastic and making a little toy. It's not that, is it? This isn't the little piggy's
Definitely
home
not
that
a
can
toy.
fall over, is it?
Definitely not a toy. So it performs very similar to a toy 3D printer, but however, it's extruding concrete and it's on a much larger scale.
It's a big piece of kit, isn't it?
Big piece of kit. It weighs 4.5 tons. It drives itself around. It's very mobile.
Where does it come from?
The technology itself's from the Netherlands. It uses technology from Switzerland as well, but however, it's manufactured in the Netherlands by some partners of ours over there, Seabay.
So you ship it here. Does it cost a lot of money? How much are these things? Are they millions of dollars? Are they hundreds of thousands of dollars? Do you need to have specialists come over from Netherlands to train you to use it?
Yeah.
I think it's interesting to try and understand what it takes to get it into Western Australia, and the risk you're taking and that other companies may look to take in the future to move the dial here.
So in regards to the training, all of our operators have been trained up by the team that flew over from the Netherlands. They spent a few weeks with them, learned the technology back to front, and they're now self-performing their own work. In regards to the cost, a large capital investment. However, that shows the market how invested we are and how much we believe in the technology. It's quite a common question about how much technology costs, and it's not an easy answer as well.
Let's say it's substantial.
It's substantial, and it goes to show how committed we are to the technology.
Okay, we'll leave it at that in terms of the risk you're taking bringing it over. I understand it might be a simple question, but how does it compare in terms of the application to a brickie when we're delivering it on site? If I'm the client standing at the front wanting to see my house getting built, what does it look like in comparison?
Aesthetically, it's standard concrete with a lot more ribs on it, so it's been compared to a rope finish before, but it can be finished in any way that traditional construction can be finished in, is typically finished in Western Australia, such as plastered, dry-lined, tiled. All of the same finishes are applied to it. But so far as how it's installed in definitely a different manner than you'd find bricks. Bricks are installed one on top of the other. You need to stop, put scaffolding up, brickies kits, etc., and then do the upper part of the wall, whereas with our print robot, it just prints up to full height in a full run of wall, and then it moves on to the next section of wall.
So how does it do that without collapsing on itself and just falling into a puddle?
Material?
When you think about concrete, you need formwork, for example, to keep it up. You need rebars, structural steel.
Yep.
When I'm looking at the video of your stuff, it's essentially a piping bag with icing sugar or Colgate toothpaste, and the robotic arms is going back and forth, just squeezing it out of the pipe, and suddenly you've got yourself a wall. But I'm sitting there thinking, is this magic? How is this working without someone putting steel through it?
The secret is in the mix, the concrete mix. So it is traditional concrete. It's just got a lot of accelerants in it and retardants as well. It does have steel in it. It does have wall ties too. So the wall ties hold the wall together. You can probably see it from the videos. But the material's self-supporting as it comes comes out of the nozzle, so it doesn't collapse, as you say before. It can hold itself up. It's at strength at 3 minutes. So after 3 minutes, you need to smash it with a hammer.
It's like a quick set concrete.
It is extremely quick set concrete. Done a lot of traditional concrete in my life, and
You couldn't pour that in there, is what you're saying?
You could, but you could only go maybe 100 millimetres high, and then you'd have to wait a couple of hours for it to go hard. Whereas our material, we've printed 3 metre high walls in 45 minutes, depending on the complexity of it.
So there's two parts to this. The technology is not just the robot and the way that it lays concrete, it's also in the concrete itself.
The concrete itself is probably even more specialised than the robot. The robot is an existing technology. ABB are the suppliers of the robot, and they're used in so many different applications. They're used in building cars for Mercedes, and they do in-flight meals for Singapore Airlines with these robots. The robot itself it just does menial tasks one after the other. The real tech is in our concrete mix, our specialist concrete mix.
Okay, all right. And is that something that is able to be supplied at scale if suddenly Perth stopped laying bricks tomorrow? Is there enough of it around that we could be building 5,000, 10,000 homes a year with this stuff if we had enough robot arms?
Eventually, yes, there would be, but currently, no. We only have the one machine. We have others on order, and we're scaling up production of the material. The material is currently being brought in from Germany, but we're manufacturing after July locally here in Perth.
That's got to be massive, doesn't it?
Yeah,
That's
so it's going to have huge savings for us, and the Perth manufacturing sector is not the easiest sector to deal with. We have limited manufacturing capacity here, so it has been a bit of a challenge, but we've overcome that now, so we're looking to manufacture locally. But the impediment to doing 5,000 homes is essentially how many robots we have. I'd say there's a larger impediment insofar as the town planning in Perth, to be honest with you. If you had 100 robots on the road, I don't think the approval process would keep up with starting.
Why is that? Do the planners have an issue with houses that are being built out of concrete in general?
Oh, no. We're fully compliant with all Australian standards and the NCC. It's all been certified by local engineers. That's not an issue itself. And as I said before, the material can be plastered or finished in any way which to comply with the DA, or if you wanted to alter it, that's fine. It's more, I don't see the issue being the ability to deliver the homes. I see the issue being the slow approval process that we have to deal with.
Just generally for housing?
Just generally for housing.
Okay.
So we can eventually scale up and assist with the demand. We're definitely not the only silver bullet to fix this issue. We need to work together with bricklayers, with formworkers, with the government as well to assist in delivering these homes. But
what you're saying is that really this technology should be able to scale. It should be able to be, I assume we're going to talk about faster than laying bricks.
Yep.
And therefore it's not going to be this technology that will be the issue when it comes to solving the problem. It will be the rest of the pipeline bandwidth along the planning approvals and those sort of things.
Correct. I suppose the point I was making is 5,000 homes would be possible to be delivered. However, you'd scale up and there would be another roadblock in the way so far as the other red tape that we have to deal with on a day-to-day basis, which is completely independent
of this
to the delivery method being traditional or with a robot.
Got ya, and preaching to the choir.
Yep.
So let's segue into time, right? When
Yep.
we think about what you're looking to substitute or complement as part of the trade, you're obviously not helping with the roofing or the tiling or the
Correct.
plastering. You're essentially a substitute to steel framing, timber framing, or bricklaying.
Or concrete walls.
Or concrete walls, right? How much faster can you do it? Do you have any examples?
I can only speak on experience. The recent project we completed in Tapping was approximately 25% quicker than doing it in double brick, and we were learning on that project as well, so we're not at full capacity. We are now. We were not, at the time, at full capacity. So it took us 18 and a half hours to do the walls across both levels, so two-storey home, 18 and a half hours of printing. That doesn't include mobilising and demobilising to site, obviously, which adds a couple of hours onto it. So that same amount of brickwork would have taken a week and a half per floor, if not 2 weeks per floor. If each week's 40 hours, you don't have to be Einstein to work out that it's significantly quicker.
Yeah, and I guess when you start to roll this out at scale in house and land package areas, single-storey houses where you can have preset plans just like the builders have these days, it starts to look a lot more efficient and you're not relying on large teams to get this out, right? What is the labour capacity? How many people per house build with one robot do you need compared to what a bricky team might be?
Comfortably, you can do it with 2 people. I like having a little bit more labour on site, so having 2 people just from a safety point of view. There are other colleagues of ours who work overseas and they do operate the machines with 1 person. From a safety point of view, we insist on having a second. But if you were to have a 3-in-1 or a 4-in-1 bricklaying team, that's the comparable amount of resources you would need to produce the same amount of brickwork that our robot's doing in 3D printing.
Okay, is it going to replace bricklaying?
Absolutely not.
Why not? Are you just being...
No, I'm not very political.
Why would it not replace bricklaying?
My grandfather's a bricklayer. So I have a very soft spot for bricklayers, so there's no issue there. Bricklaying is always going to have a place. Perth has an affinity with brickwork. Councils stipulate that external walls have to be face brick in some applications, and we aren't the only solution to an ingrained problem in Western Australia and Australia generally. So the amount of homes that are getting delivered is far below where we should be. The target set by Anthony Albanese over the next however many years...
It was laughable. Everyone knew that from day one.
Correct. So we're well behind where we need to be. One robot or 10 robots isn't going to fix that. It needs to be a concerted effort between bricklayers, form workers, steel framing teams.
So let's say we get 15 years down the track. Yep. We've got 100 robotic arms in Western Australia pumping these things out through the suburbs, doing what bricklayers do right now. And this isn't in any way a plan to displace bricklayers, but I'm just looking at it from afar going, many laborious, hard jobs have been replaced, if not transformed, over the centuries, especially in the industrial age, where you'd sit there and go, there's no way you'd ever not have this person on the conveyor belt closing the jar, for example, right? And then a robotic arm came and did it for them, and those people don't do that anymore. Is this looking down the barrel of saying, if the community can be, I guess, comfortable with the application of fast setting concrete, it's cheaper, it's quicker, and it's just as stable, which I think is the big one that people like about double brick in Perth. They can knock on it and they don't get any
you
rebound.
Don't go around knocking,
Then, and we can still put our applications of our cladding and nice plastering and things like that on there. Not many people build in face brick these days, for example.
That's purely because of the labour constraints at the moment.
So why wouldn't we be able to be in a situation where we've got a specialist group of bricklayers in Western Australia that are always doing that as a cladding or a specialist homes in terms of style, but the ballast of our labour market has actually moved to less laborious work, which is managing the robots to put up the concrete-based homes in Western Australia. Is that not a possibility?
It is definitely a possibility, and we run a commercial building company, JCM Construction. We actually saw that happen in commercial construction 15 years ago. So traditional concrete with formwork and ply, etc., was slowly, I wouldn't say replaced, a product entered the market which replaced the temporary formwork requirements, and it just meant permanent formwork was introduced. Yes, it is definitely possible that our robot would come in and fill a massive gap in the market. However, I'm just cognizant that bricklayers are always going to be a requirement for some of the smaller work, some of the more intricate work, for example, that is needed in designs. And there are a lot of architects around town who still...
Of course, I just see what you're bringing to the table here is turning a bricklayer into a stonemason. Right.
Yeah, that's very well put. So essentially moving to more of a specialist kind of trade, and I don't
more expensive per brick, but everyone understands that this is a really
it's bespoke
skill rather than being essentially a labour job. And look, that's what we need. We need to clearly, unless we're going to have 1,000 more young people who want to be bricklayers next year, or 1,000 more immigrants who want to be bricklayers come into the country next year, we need something that's going to replace or assist the scale of what is the most acceptable form of construction in residential market in WA, which is bricks. And this is the most viable thing I've seen, as long as you can answer the next question and in the right way. What's the cost to look like? Because no one's going to do this if it costs 50% more. We spoke about modular homes a few weeks ago, and it was pretty obvious to me out of that conversation, this is not the answer to Western Australia's supply problems. It's a bespoke outcome for certain parts of the way, but it's not fixing the issue in Perth Metro. What's the cost comparison?
So just on the modular, I 100% agree with you. It's got a place, however, potentially not in the metro area. But our product, and I can only speak from experience from our actual projects, I'm a quantity surveyor by qualification, the data shows that just on the walls, not on the whole construction of a 2-storey home that we recently completed in Tapping, it was 22% cheaper.
And that's with you guys probably needing to learn some lessons along the way and buying stuff out of Germany.
Buying stuff out of Germany, so it will come down. What it ends up being, I know what that's going to be, and that doesn't factor in, we have no requirement for brickies kits, we've got no requirement for handrails on the 2nd storey and upper floor scaffolding. They're all other costs and time savings as well, which we haven't factored into.
So you've essentially compared the retail cost that you would charge someone for putting out X square meters of wall versus paying a brickie and his team for sand, for concrete, for bricks, for brick tyres and all those things that
And
they'd
the
be
labour.
bringing to the table
Yeah.
and their labour. And you've gone, we reckon at the moment, even without having done this at scale yet, we're at 20-ish% cheaper.
Correct.
And brickies aren't getting any cheaper either.
Or younger. And that's part of the problem is there's a very low uptake of apprentices who want to take up bricklaying apprenticeships, and it is an ageing trade. Most bricklayers are getting old now, and it's a tough gig on your body.
I have high respect for
So do
bricklayers.
I.
There's no way
Yeah.
I could do that as a job. Okay, so let's talk about some of the more practical things, like when we think about our double brick walls, we have our cavities that we use for insulation these days. We have our cavities where we put our conduits through for all our pipe work, our electrical work. How do you do that when you have a big block of concrete?
The beauty of our system, the reason why we chose this machine, is it can replicate any design that you have in double brick or stud framing, and it just prints in the exact same manner. So if you have a double brick wall with 2 bricks and whatever the cavity is, whatever is designed, the machine will just replicate that.
So you were making a double concrete home.
Just out of concrete instead, and without hundreds of perp joints and bed joints which could potentially crack and cause issues in the future. We have a monolithic wall which is all poured in one. And so, yeah, you can put whatever form of insulation you want down the cavity. You can add in reinforcement if it's turned into a retaining wall, and weep holes to allow for drainage. It's all as per double brick, or it can be as per the concrete code, or you can replace timber framing and steel framing if you wish, and you just eliminate the steel columns or concrete columns needed for steel framing.
Wow. So we really are essentially building a double brick home, if we want to, just using concrete instead of clay.
Yeah. And the beauty of it is, the reason why we chose it, because we have our own commercial construction business, JCM, this robot doesn't require redocumentation. So a lot of systems that have come into the market and have tried to enter the market and be successful, they require full redocumentation, full re-engineering. Our system takes an existing design, provided it's done in CAD. If it's not done in CAD, it needs to just be considered a little bit more. You can take a design and build it straight away without any alterations to it.
Now, I assume this is a dumb question. Is it as strong as brick? Is it stronger?
Stronger. Yeah.
I assume so. Heavier, probably.
A little bit heavier, yeah. So the standard brick will give you between 10 and 15 MPa strength. Our product at full strength after 28 days gets you 50.
Wow.
So it's significantly stronger, or invite anyone to have a go at trying to put a hole through that. And it does present other issues because it is so strong. If somebody forgets something in a wall...
Want to chase a wall.
If you want to chase a wall, it's a little bit more difficult. It's like chasing a traditional concrete wall or a precast wall, whereas if you wanted to chase a brick wall, it is a little bit easier. So that does present an issue. However, the robot itself can print conduits. So if your design is considered enough and your design allows for where you're going to ultimately place your power points and where you're going to have taps, etc., you put that in your design, the robot will print a conduit in the wall for you.
That
so
saves a lot of labour as well.
You're not paying your electrician to put pipes down the wall. They're just pulling a draw wire through and theoretically screwing a faceplate to it and moving on. So it should, when it's adopted at full capacity, it should eliminate additional costs.
That's very cool.
Yeah, it's really cool.
What about finishes? Now, personally, I'm not a big fan of the rope look. It looks a little bit futuristic, like we're going to the Jetsons. What if I wanted the house to have a smooth look, or I wanted to put some sort of templated brick look back onto the concrete, or whatever it is? Can that be done at the time before it sets nearly, or is the only way to fix this to put a cladding on top?
Obviously, the easiest finish is the exposed structural finish, which is the rope look, like you said. I really like it, but I think I've just been looking at it for a really long time. You can sponge it as it's going off, but it goes off really quickly, so it turns into kind of almost like a render-like look.
Oh, a lot of people like that.
Yeah, a lot of people like that there, and then it also helps if you don't have to put a sub base on to do any plastering or anything. You can just actually put your final coat on it. Another thing that the robot can do is it can take any geometric pattern or any text or any numbers and print them directly into the wall. So if you wanted to do a new entry statement here and write the Perth Property Show in it, it'll print it into the wall.
Or your street number.
Or your street number, even simpler.
You could write it in letters.
You could write it in whatever you want. So if you're doing retaining walls at the front of subdivisions, you know how they always have the name of the subdivision there? Instead of writing it or getting it laser cut in a piece of metal, you can actually write it in the concrete, integral to the wall. So if anyone comes and graffitis it or damages, it's concrete. So it's...
But it would be in a rope look.
It'll ultimately be in a rope look.
Set out whilst it's being set.
We are talking to the guys about changing the height and depth of the rope, so it'll be less or more frequent, the ropes, but yes, you're always going to have that look.
I see a future where you'd have someone applying a template or smoothing as a skill when we look at this, just to add a different option.
There are spatulas you can apply to the end of the nozzle which trowel it off as you go, but we're treating it as a mostly structural finish, so we're not so concerned.
Of course. And when you think about the market in WA, we talk about different bonds, different stretcher types, different brick colours, brick heights. All those things are the variations in that we're used to buying brick houses.
Correct.
So I think it would be cool when it comes to the concrete applications to do similar things. What about colour, for example?
Any colour that you can get in an oxide, whatever colour you decide, you can put into the wall as well. It's just added into the mix as we go along.
Now, we've spoken about the residential applications. What about in commercial? If I wanted to build a warehouse tomorrow or a workshop and put a gantry crane on top of it, can you be a part of that solution as well?
No problem. We're in discussions with a developer for a big factory in High Wycombe at the moment to replace all the precast on the project. So essentially our robot will replace all of the precast that's going onto the project and significantly eliminating all of the safety issues, because precast it's a brilliant product, but it does have some serious safety issues. And as the director of a commercial building company, or as a director of any company now, the legislation changed recently and there's some serious ramifications for if anything goes wrong on site from a safety point of view, and eliminating those risks altogether by reducing the amount of precast or getting rid of it altogether on a project is a huge win for any developer or builder.
Cost and time?
Time-wise, it's faster because it's all done in situ. So theoretically, the product could be shop drawn and approved on the same day that you could start printing panels if you wanted to, if you were organised enough. Call it a day later. And whereas the shop drawing process of precast will take however long it takes, let's say it takes a week, and then you've got to go set up beds and pour them, and they're normally poured out in an industrial area somewhere, and then they've got to be trucked in 3 panels at a time, 5 panels at a time, then craned into position. That all takes time, all costs money. Riggers aren't cheap. Cranes aren't cheap. Our machine just gets driven to site and starts printing.
Cost,
we haven't actually done the exercise yet on real data, but theoretically comparing it to the precast is coming in just under 30% cheaper.
That's fantastic. Think about industrial workshops. It's mainly concrete and a roof.
It's all concrete and a little bit of steel. But we're very comfortable that we'll actually exceed that 30% yet, but we haven't fully started publicising it until we have real data.
So you're obviously pretty early on in the growth cycle of the business and the service to WA and maybe even the country. What's stopping you, or let's say anyone else, being a part of that solution to the effect of 1,000 homes next year?
Nothing, just more uptake, more operators, more investment from the government's put out some really good grants for innovation in housing, which we're talking to them about at the moment. So that's the impediment at the moment, just uptake and more acceptance of the technology, which hasn't presented as an issue so far. We've had dozens of architects, dozens of engineers, dozens of developers come to our sites and inspect the product. We've provided them samples, all the detailing, and we're in discussions, and I have a few projects under contract now to do in 3D printed concrete, both with Contec Australia and under JCM as the head contractor.
My thoughts would be that you really need to get a couple of the big project builders on board to say, hey, stop using Midland bricks, or at least keep using them, but also offer this technology, and we can be X amount cheaper for your product. Let's just see who wants to take it up.
Yeah. Oh, look, if they're listening now, happy to have a chat. But I think as a first stop, getting into the housing market and speaking to one of the bigger players in that market there, I think that's a real opportunity for the Perth market generally. It's only going to assist. You don't need to go very far to all these new subdivisions which have just got slabs down and possibly a couple of packs of bricks sitting there, or
for years,
no bricks sitting there for years, and mum and dad, patiently waiting for their home to be delivered. And the bricklaying element is probably the most constrained at the moment. Roof carpenters are a little bit easier to get now, and other trades have freed up a little bit.
But it was mainly those two.
It's mainly bricklaying at the moment. So, if we can alleviate some of the pressure and help deliver, a few homes, I can only see that as being a benefit.
And it helps you be able to justify scaling and getting 10 more robots.
Correct, and I believe it's 100% suitable for that market. I don't think there's any issue, and we can go anywhere around the state. It's just on the back of a truck. The machine drives itself once it gets off the truck, so there's no impediment. There's no, like you say with modular, you need oversized trucks and you need pilot vehicles to take it anywhere. We're on a standard truck. We can drive our machine around.
What can't it do?
Anything you can't draw, the machine can't print. Provided you can draw it and the laws of physics apply. Obviously, if you're trying to do something where it's going to collapse on itself, of course, it's not going to be able to print it. So it can do anything that can be drawn in CAD. Whether it's economical or not, that's a whole other story. But generally, replacing walls, staircases. We're printing staircases as well.
How do you print a staircase without formwork?
Very easy, very easy.
Jeez, this must be the quickest setting concrete in world history.
Very quick, but it's printed on its side. And
then you just turn it over. And
correct, and you just lay it over and it's in situ. And you can do it with or without reinforcement. So without reo, it needs to be sitting on fill. But if you don't want it sitting on fill, you want it to be a suspended stair. You fill it full of concrete and follow whatever the engineer's details are for reinforcement. It's a very simple detail. Once you have a look at the data and the videos and the pictures of us doing it, then you'll see how simple it actually is to do. You have the rope finish still, so you need to apply a finish or you can leave it. It complies with the non-slip requirements under the standard.
Of course it would. Be pretty good for that, actually.
There's no issue. So from that point of view, stairs, we're getting a lot of traction with curved balustrades as well. A lot of projects that we come into as JCM have been value engineered to the eyeballs, and they've got every bit of fruit taken out of them that the architect originally wanted, and it's normally curves. They always want curves and they don't want a straight wall. Our robot doesn't discriminate between curves or a right angle. Costs the same. Provided the amount of material required is no, then there's no additional cost.
Curves are probably a bit easier, stronger usually.
Yeah, they're stronger. They're definitely stronger. And curves are, for the robot, I'd hazard a guess easier, but they're definitely no more complicated than a right angle. Doing a lot of curved walls, doing a lot of facades, also doing pools as well. Above and below ground pools. We're talking to a lot of landscape architects. We're doing one coming up in Peppermint Grove as well.
Good place to start.
Yeah, everyone needs pools. And there's a lot of infrastructure work as well we've got coming up. So we're talking to a few suppliers of artificial reefs up north and down south in Albany, and skate parks as well. There's a whole bunch of stuff.
You'll be the coolest dad in Perth.
Probably get them onto the skate park nice and early. It's not just limited to housing. We're focusing on housing and construction because we have a commercial construction business, obviously, but it's not limited to that.
Mark, this is super exciting to me. It makes me want to go and buy a couple of robot arms and be a part of the solution, to be honest. This is actually the first time I've been on a podcast talking to someone about a solution on the housing supply space where I've gone, this is a thing. This should work. I don't see why it wouldn't. From a first time you've actually said it can be cheaper, it can be faster, and it can be scalable. Why aren't we talking about this more often, and why hasn't this been done by some of the bigger project builders a while ago? Why is it Mark D'Alessandro from JCM Constructions who's the first guy who's bringing a robot from the Netherlands in?
I can't answer to why everyone else hasn't done it yet. We're more than happy to work with the market and address some of the acute housing issues that we're experiencing at the moment.
Thank you very much, mate. I appreciate the chat, and I'll be having chats with higher up people if I can about this, because I really think this is something we should be looking at, and I'll watch this space for WA in the future.
Thanks.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Perth Property Show. If you've only just joined the conversation, you can catch up by heading over to our website, perthpropertyshow.com.au, subscribing to the podcast, or joining our Facebook page. Don't forget to tune in next Monday at 7 a.m. for more expert insights, local analysis, and suburb spotlights. Happy hunting!